Hello everyone. Back again with Film Recap. In this video, I will recap one of the unique films from 1986, titled Little Shop of Horrors. Before we get to the storyline, don't forget to like and subscribe for more film recaps and have a great day. At the beginning of the film, we are shown a flower shop employee named Seymour. Seymour isn't alone in the shop, he has a colleague named Audrey. But the difference is Audrey is well cared for by Mr. Mushnick, the shop owner. Meanwhile, Seymour was constantly scolded by Mr. Mushnick for his careless work habits. Furthermore, Mr. Mushnick is quite emotional since his flower shop hasn't been visited by customers in months. The business was so slow that the three of them couldn't think of anything else to do. In the end, Mr. Mushnick had no other choice but to close his shop from tomorrow morning until an unknown time in the future. As a result, Audrey provided Mr. Mushnick an idea regarding a strange and unique plant that Seymour found in the shop's backyard. However, Mr. Mushnick wasn't sure that his shop would become crowded by relying on the strange plant he has found. In fact, Seymour himself is not sure how attractive this plant will be if it is seen by visitors. But after just a few seconds, there was already one visitor who was interested in the plant. This made Mr. Mushnick was both confused and excited, as a result of the sudden increase of visitors to his shop. As a result, Audrey, Seymour and also Mr. Mushnick decided not to sell the strange plant, but instead they uses it as an attraction to encourage everyone to purchase other plants. Mr. Mushnick, who was proud with his two employees' idea, invited them to dinner tonight. However, Audrey had to refuse the invitation, since she had promised her boyfriend for a weekend away. Mr. Mushnick also claims Audrey has lately been a victim of assault. Since dinner had been cancelled, he then asked Seymour to look after the plant as an extra task. At the moment, there really isn't much entertainment for Seymour other than the strange plant he's found. But that wasn't the case. Seymour had absolutely no idea why this plant had wilted in a while. Despite the fact that he was very consistent in fertilizing, watering, and exposed it to sunlight throughout the day. Until one moment, Seymour's hand was pricked by a thorn from another plant, causing him to bleed through his finger. This is the moment when Seymour notices that something is wrong with the plant. The plant was moving suddenly, while telling Seymour to feed it something. Plus, the only food requested turned out to be the blood on Seymour's finger. Surprisingly, the plant was able to detect which finger was bleeding and which was not. Seymour had no other choice, and he was forced to feed the plant with drops of his blood. As we can see, after being fed, the plant genuinely swallowed fresh blood from Seymour's finger. In fact, just a few drops of blood was able to make the plant size growth by a few inches. Long story short, because its size continues to grow day by day, Seymour was invited by the local radio to explain the phenomenon. However, the only thing that no one else knew about the plant was that it was sucking Seymour's blood all the time. Seymour was forced to feed it with his own blood every time, despite the fact that he had no idea how long he'd have to do it. Moreover, the plant grows so quick until it reaches the height of a teenager. This attraction makes local residents excited to come to the shop, which keeps Mr. Mushnick busy to serve them. Mr. Mushnick also doesn't seem to care about Seymour at all, despite the fact that Seymour has made significant sacrifices. As a result, Audrey, who had become Seymour's only confidant, planned to take him for a walk that night. After that, the scene switches to Audrey's boyfriend, Oren. He works as a dentist and has a habit of using violence in the course of his profession, which causes his patients to be traumatized and unwilling to return. Seymour, who was excited to spend time with Audrey, suddenly approached by Oren in front of his house. From here, it turns out that Seymour has been living in Mr. Mushnick's flower shop all this time, since he had no family in the city. He had also witnessed how Oren treated Audrey. In other words, this proves Mr. Mushnick's claim that Audrey had always been a victim of her boyfriend's aggression. Seymour's plan was therefore cancelled, and he returned to his daily routine of spending time with his strange plant. However, just as he was about to go to sleep, the plant suddenly wilted again. Following that, he was shocked to hear the plant was able to speak. Of course, the plant immediately told Seymour that it was time to feed it. The problem is, no matter how Seymour continues to refuse and avoid, the plant kept forcing him to find it a food. Seymour didn't really know what to do at the time. He then saw Oren, who was forcing Audrey to walk home as a punishment. Seymour, who saw this, could no longer hold his emotions, and he eventually set up a plan to carry out an assassination. The next day, he deliberately came to Oren's workplace and pretended to be a patient. But before that, he had to wait for Oren to finish treating one of his patients. After minutes of waiting, it was now his turn. Before dealing with Seymour, Oren put on the gas mask he had just bought while traveling with Audrey. I'm not sure what his purpose was, but what is clear that Seymour immediately took advantage of the situation to shoot Oren. However, the problem is he doesn't dare to kill people, and Oren was finally killed by his own mask right away. As a result, the body of Oren, who had died, was dragged by Seymour far away from the place, until he arrived at the flower shop. Oren's body then was dragged back into the backyard to be cut into pieces. Mr. Mushnick, on the other hand, seems to have been away and is now walking towards his house to return home. Plus, his house was just next to his shop, causing him to hear Seymour's axe swinging. As a result of his curiosity, Mr. Mushnick then went to find out, and he saw Seymour dismembering someone's body. After that, he immediately fed the plant with Oren's body. As the day passed, Seymour, who was worried about his actions, saw Audrey, who was being approached by two policemen. It turned out that the two policemen questioned Audrey regarding the disappearance of Oren, who was not working today. When Seymour heard of this, he told Audrey to forget about Oren, who was always assaulting her. Plus, Audrey admitted that she actually couldn't stand Oren's presence anymore. Seymour then confessed his feelings to Audrey, while soothing her with all kind of seduction. After that, Seymour, who had finished spend time with Audrey, then returned to the shop. However, he was surprised by the presence of Mr. Mushnick, who was already in the basement. Mr. Mushnick threatened him to take responsibility for his actions before. He revealed that he was a witness to the assassination late at previous night, and he also told Seymour to confess to the police. But in just a few minutes, Mr. Mushnick changed his mind and instead offered Seymour another solution, on the condition that he be allowed to leave town for a few months. In the meantime, Mr. Mushnick will look after the plant himself. But, Mr. Mushnick was not welcomed by the plant, which instead turned him into a meal that he ate in his own shop. A few days after the incident, instead of being a fugitive, Seymour was visited by many of TV companies. A large number of media outlets requested Seymour's signature in order to have interviews with him. At this point, the plant had grown to the point that it was touching the shop's ceiling. When the interview was about to start, the plant suddenly wilted again, leaving everyone confused. As a result, Seymour then rushed them all out, claiming he was going to provide medication to the plant, despite that he was just confused how to feed the plant in such crowded conditions. After that, Seymour got an idea when he saw his girlfriend. The idea is he planned to use the money from the TV company as well as the magazine to get out of the city. Plus, their lives will undoubtedly be more peaceful, without the presence of that plant. In the evening, Seymour attempted to secretly run away, leaving the wilting plant without food. But he was again forced to look for food, which he finally agreed to. But since he was in a hurry, he just planned to buy an animal meat. At the same time, Audrey, who was on call, saw the plant moving while staring at her. As a result, Audrey became curious, until she went straight to the flower shop. As she entered the shop, she was surprised to hear that the plant was able to speak to her. But unfortunately, Audrey was immediately pulled and swallowed at the moment. Seymour, who had just arrived, immediately tried to save Audrey, who had been swallowed half her body. Well, despite the fact that Audrey was successfully rescued, but in the end, she had to die because of the poison from the plant's mouth. He was sad because the only woman he loved had to die in front of his eyes. Seymour, with a broken heart, made Audrey the last food for the plant. Once Seymour finished feeding the plant, he was at a loss for what to do, so he rushed to the top of the building and decided to commit suicide. However, he was surprised by the presence of journalists who was already on the rooftop. The reporter admitted he had taken some parts of the plant at the time of the interview. The result of his actions were not in vain, since he managed to grow a similar plant in his house. Even worse, the journalists, who had been tempted by $1, decided to produce the plant in large quantities. And of course, He will sell these plants to everyone who are tempted to have them. They had not yet realized the disaster for humanity would soon occur as a result of this idea. At the same time, the plant's mother grew much larger than before. Plus, the mother plant produces a large number of offspring. In the end, Seymour as a keeper for the plant was eventually devoured alive. After a while, these plants have been mass-produced and sold to the public, despite the fact that they all had no idea how dangerous the plant was to their lives. In just a few days, the plague of giant plants had started, which caused life in the city to fall in an instant. They had to witness such a large man-eating plants had taken over the city instead of zombies. All the giant plants had threatened human life, no matter the place or situation. And the film ends. Okay guys. That's all the recap for The Little Shop of Horrors. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video.